Hello, in this video I'll be showing you how to answer the BMAT 2008 Section 2, Question 15. So we have a car that accelerates from rest by a constant thrust force along a horizontal road. The car eventually reaches terminal speed. Which line identifies the correct labels for each of these three graphs? So we will discuss each graph in turn. So for graph X, we have our quantity starting off very high, and then eventually over time it goes to zero. So we can conclude from this graph that it cannot be potential energy, as the car is traveling along a horizontal road, so the potential energy is constant, as there's no change in height. Well, this graph can be acceleration, as the car accelerates from rest, so its acceleration is very high, and then it eventually reaches terminal speed, where it has zero acceleration. Or it can be resultant force, which will also start off very high, as the only force will be thrust. Then as the car gets faster, you have increase in drag, which will decrease the resultant force until you reach terminal speed, where the thrust will balance out the drag and you'll have zero resultant force. So we can see that we can rule out C and D. Moving on to graph Y, we can see we have our quantity starts off at zero, and then eventually it'll level off at a maximum value. So we can conclude from this graph that it cannot be the mass, as the mass of the car is constant. It can, however, be velocity, as the car starts off from rest and eventually it reaches a terminal speed. And it can either be drag force, as the drag force starts off at zero when the car's at rest, and it'll be at its maximum value when the car reaches terminal speed. So from this we can rule out B and E. Now finally, looking at graph Z, we can see that our quantity stays constant over time. So we can rule out kinetic energy, as kinetic energy will increase as the speed increases, eventually leveling off when the car reaches terminal speed, which means that graph Z is the weight, which makes sense as the weight is constant, as the mass of the car is constant and gravity is not changing here. So from this we can rule out A, which means that our correct answer is F.